Hello Solar Eclipse Timer users, this is Dr. Telepan again with a spooky eclipse story. This is the story about the change in the character of lighting that occurs just before totality. It is the weirdest, most eerie appearing natural lighting effect you will ever witness. I'm serious. It can only be experienced at a total solar eclipse. Let's talk about it. Observe changes in ambient lighting. Although I think shadow bands are the coolest lighting effect that you can see at an eclipse, the change in ambient lighting is a very close second. My app will remind you when to observe for both of these effects. Now what's obvious is that the sunlight is dimming leading up to totality because the moon is covering the sun. That's true but basic. The lighting change we see is due to a much more complicated biologic system called dark adaptation. There is really a lot to it. I'm going to break down this chart and teach you the crucial points because as an eclipse chaser, you should know the details about enjoying this part of an eclipse. To make a video about enjoying the change in ambient lighting, we need to cover 4 topics: the pupil and retina, linear light rays, the Purkinje effect, and solar limb color shift. It's too much to discuss in a single video, so this video is part 1 where we will cover the pupil and retina and linear lighting. Part 2 will cover shifts in the color spectrum. About 4 to 5 minutes, at most 6 minutes before totality, you really start to perceive the decreasing light. But the character of the light and the character of the colors is changing too. You only have a few minutes to enjoy this, because at 2 minutes before totality, you will also start looking for shadow bands. Think about that. During the entire eclipse, which from C1 to C4 takes over 3 hours, you only have about 5 or 6 minutes to experience and enjoy the most unusual lighting situation you will ever witness on Earth. It's wild looking. It's bizarre. It's almost not explainable. You really do have to witness it for yourself, because it's not just dimming of light. You perceive this eerie shift in the color of your surroundings to a tint of silver gray tone. Let's start by discussing the pupillary light reflex, followed by the anatomy of the retina. The sun is being covered by the moon, and the sun is getting slimmer and slimmer, so there is a physical blocking of light. But you look around at your surroundings, and it looks like regular daylight illumination. You are amazed. You're looking up at the sun through your solar glasses, and it's now 70% covered. You look around, and it looks like normal daytime to you. Then 80% and 90% covered, and you look around, and it still looks like normal daytime. How can that be? Here's the deal. When you arrive at your eclipse observing site before first contact in full sun, your eyes and your brain are sensing the ambient light and making amazing adjustments. Something we can easily document and understand is the function of your iris muscle, the colored part of your eye. It is constricting down to make a small pupil that limits light getting into your eye. Also, back in your retina, where we can't document, the photoreceptor cells and their neural pathways are down-regulating and inhibiting impulses to your brain. Your eye-brain team is working together to make adjustments and compensations to give you the perception of proper daytime exposure. Your iris is acting like the diaphragm in a camera lens in automatic mode. In bright conditions, a camera will automatically adjust the diaphragm to a small opening, which is the same as your iris making your pupil a small opening. This is why you may see eclipse observers wearing a patch on one eye. They are trying to keep one eye better dark adapted, so when totality occurs, they can remove the patch and have a better immediate appreciation of the faint corona. Here's a video of a camera lens diaphragm moving from a small aperture to a large aperture. When it is small, less light gets in. When it's large, more light gets in. This is what your pupil does automatically when your eye-brain system is sensing the amount of ambient light. So, the aperture is the opening, and the area of the opening can be calculated with the formula area equals pi times the radius squared. So, back to arriving at your observing site. You are in bright sunlight and your pupils are maximally constricted to about 2 millimeters in diameter. The formula states the radius, which is 1 millimeter, gets squared, equaling 1, times pi, which is 3.14. So your pupil, at 2 millimeters in diameter, has an area of 3.14 millimeters squared to let light into your eye. This animation is plotting what is happening to the amount of light reaching the ground as more sun gets obscured. It progressively decreases, but to you, as the observer, you are not perceiving this dramatic change. For the first 80 to 90% of the eclipse, if you weren't looking up with your eclipse glasses, you would be unaware that it was even happening. Let's look at some real data from the 2017 eclipse. This first curve from Oregon was generated in an interesting way. It was done by getting the light value off of pictures taken of the full sky with a wide-angle lens as the eclipse progressed. Look at the data points, which are the yellow dots. It shows the sky staying bright for a while, and then it starts a relatively smooth progressive decrease in brightness up to totality. This light data is different. This is a very accurate measurement of ambient light at the eclipse, but it is measured in units of lux. It was obtained in Oregon by Dave Vernier using a Vernier Lux data logger made by his company. Look at the steady, smooth decrease in light reaching the ground. Let's look at the sun being blocked using a different parameter. This interesting curve is data from solar panels in Lawrence County, Alabama, where it only got to a 95% partial eclipse. The black line is eclipse day. It shows the decrease in electricity output as the energy delivered to Earth by the sun decreased from C1 to the 95% eclipse. The blue line is the following day. The short downward spikes are due to passing clouds. These three sets of data show how the sunlight is progressively dimming. Let's go back to the illumination chart. The first row shows ambient lighting situations which we can relate to: sunlight, indoor lighting, moonlight, and starlight. The second row is real light measurements, and then expected pupil diameter. Let's remove the real light measurements because that is not the focus of our discussion. And let's insert the progression of an eclipse where it would lie on this chart. This is a cool way to look at it. During an eclipse, you go from lighting conditions that are full sunlight to moonlight in about an hour and 45 minutes. At totality, the total amount of luminance around you is about the same as being outside under a full moon. Look at the expected pupil reaction, from 2 millimeters up to 5 millimeters of dilation. So during the progression of the eclipse, your eye-brain system is sensing the decreasing light. So let's say the dimmer light has made your pupil open to 3 millimeters. The area for light to enter is now 7.07 millimeters squared. That is a 125% increase in the pupil area from when you arrived before C1. With further dimming, your pupils open to 4 millimeters. The area is now 12.57 millimeters squared, and this is 300% more area than before C1. Let's watch the zoomed in video of the pupil hard at work. It's amazing to watch the pupil make micro adjustments. I have the face lit with a very bright bulb on a dimmer switch and also a red light. As the white light gets dimmed, the red light allows illumination of the eye for the video without stimulating the pupillary light reflex. Watch the pupil react and dilate as I dim the white light. This video is in real time. So watch the rapid small adjustments of the pupil. Look at the full dilation of the pupil when the white light is dimmed to off. Then, as I increase the white light, look at the pupil begin to constrict again. It's simply amazing and beautiful to watch the eye-brain system react like this. At the same time, back at your retina, the photoreceptor cells and the neural pathways are adjusting and increasing their sensitivity to light. The biochemistry and the neurophysiology of the retina is incredibly complex. It can make adjustments for light intensity over many orders of magnitude. The specific biochemical details are beyond the scope of this video, but the basic structure is relevant. The eye has two types of photoreceptors. One type is called a cone because it is shaped like a cone. We have about 6 to 7 million cones. They have the following characteristics. They are responsible for our vision in bright light conditions. They require more photons to stimulate an impulse. Vision in bright light conditions is called photopic vision. On the illumination chart, this is the range where the cones function. They have this large range of function because of a process called photopigment bleaching to adjust their sensitivity. They are located centrally in the area of the retina called the fovea centralis. Therefore, they are responsible for our fine vision because they react quickly and have more independent neural connections to the brain. So packets of information from the cones remain distinct, less mixed. And finally, they allow us to perceive color because the cones come in 3 varieties, with peak absorption at different wavelengths, blue, green, and red, about 420, 534, and 564 nanometers respectively. The second type is called a rod because it is slender and shaped like a rod. We have about 90 million rods. These have the following characteristics. They are responsible for vision in low light conditions because they are very sensitive to photons. In fact, a few or even a single photon can stimulate an impulse. Vision in low light conditions is called scotopic vision. Rods have less ability to adjust their sensitivity, and they are mainly located in the periphery of the retina. Many rods are connected to a single neural connection to the brain, so packets of information from rods is combined, which of course is good for low light vision, but is not good for fine detail. Rods are not involved with color because there is one type with a single peak absorption in the blue-green region at about 498 nanometers. You see that there is not a strict cutoff point. Look at the range of overlap between cone and rod function. This middle section, where the cones and rods both function, is called mesopic vision. So, let me add the eclipse progression and you see where it falls on the chart. The crucial period of time that we are talking about is in this mesopic zone. That is what makes the overall illumination change so interesting to us and what is going to impact the color of the surroundings, which we will discuss in the Part 2 video. In addition to the sensitivity adjustments made in the biochemistry of the photoreceptor cells, there are complex feedback loops in the layers of the ganglion cells that process the brightness information further before relaying it to the brain, where you finally perceive the scene around you. The entire system can distinguish light levels that vary by a factor of 100 million. Everyone has had the experience of walking from a bright room into a dark room, like walking into a movie theater. As I have shown you, your pupil will react immediately, but that is only partially helpful. The processes in the retina take many minutes, but eventually your eye-brain system dark adapts and you see well in the theater. Now think about the partial phases on eclipse day. Your eye-brain system is making incremental adjustments over about 90 minutes. The retina has plenty of time to make continual minor adjustments for you. You are oblivious to the changing lighting conditions until the very end, because at a point, the compensation can't keep up, and you start to perceive the decreasing ambient light. You are not a light meter. Your biology is complex, and your eye-brain system is working hard to compensate and help you achieve good exposure in the changing lighting conditions. So let's repeat the animation of the light curve, but add a second curve, the black squares, which represent your brain's perception of the light. It shows how you perceive the lighting as not changing early on because of the slow, steady compensation until you can't compensate any further. And suddenly, you notice the change. At an eclipse in 2006, I tried to document the dimming lighting effect by using a video camera that I could put into complete manual mode. So what I did was prevent the camera from compensating for the decreasing light. I wanted to force it to record, starting from bright conditions all the way to the low light of totality, but with no exposure changes. But I discovered that it's impossible to do. Because to have the proper exposure to record the surroundings at totality, you have to start out with an exposure tremendously overexposed. The dynamic range of lighting is so large. So this video goes to black. Now, of course, totality does not look black to us because we compensate, but this camera could not do that. This video makes me appreciate how great our dark adaptation ability is. If our biology did not give us the ability to dark adapt, this is how life would appear to us in conditions of decreasing light. The video starts about 8 minutes and 30 seconds before totality and is pointed in the direction of umbra approach. At the starting point of this video, it would look like regular daylight to you. Let's look again at the 2017 Lux data and mark a segment of time 15 minutes before totality. Look how much the measured light has actually decreased. Here's a picture of the slim crescent from the 2006 Eclipse video at 14 minutes before totality. Even with this much sun blocked, your surroundings will still look bright to you. Here's a 2006 picture of the slim crescent at 4 minutes before totality. By this point in an eclipse, you notice a decrease in the brightness of the ambient light. All of the eclipse videos you will see on the internet will have cameras in an automatic mode compensating for the changing lighting. So the cameras are behaving like your eye-brain system. My video from 2006 is different because it documents the dynamic range of lighting at an eclipse, forcing the image to go to black. Let's look at the video. The timer is counting down to just before totality. When the video shows the eclipse at the 4-minute mark, begin to look carefully at the lighting changes. You'll notice I changed the exposure one time at the 6:50 mark because I thought the video was getting too dark too quickly. So again, this video should give us an appreciation for our ability to compensate for conditions of decreasing light. Let's discuss the second physical thing that makes eclipse lighting look so weird just before totality. Because it is another lighting component that can never occur on a regular day. It can only occur at an eclipse: linear light rays. This is the effect of the sunlight changing from a round globe of light to a linear aligned source of light as the sun becomes a crescent. Before first contact, the sun is a round globe sending light rays to the ground in an infinite amount of directions. When the sun is changed to a crescent, the light reaches the ground in a more linear fashion. This effect is demonstrated in my sharp and fuzzy shadow experiment and is the subject of one of my other partial phase phenomena videos. I will put the link below. When the sun is a globe, all shadows to the ground have fuzzy edges. But when the sun becomes a crescent, even as early as a 50% crescent, light begins to reach the ground in a more linear, directional fashion. Shadows in line with the crescent become sharp, and shadows perpendicular to the crescent stay fuzzy. My app will remind you to look for this effect. So within 10 minutes of totality, with an extremely thin crescent sun, although you are not specifically concentrating on it, the directional linear light has a dramatic effect on the appearance of your surroundings. Your brain is simply not used to that type of directional ambient lighting. Combine this with the quickly dimming light and the color spectrum changes, and you realize why this point in the eclipse is completely amazing. This is absolutely the only time on Earth when you can experience this effect. And it only lasts a precious 4 to 5 minutes, and the conditions are changing every second. Thank you for watching this Solar Eclipse Timer episode. Part 2 will discuss color spectrum issues and how that affects what we perceive. If you watch both Part 1 and Part 2, you will know what to look for and understand what is happening during this period of an eclipse. If you find my work interesting, please subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below. Also click the little bell that will pop up. That will make sure you are notified when I release new episodes about solar eclipses. Share the video with friends and post comments and questions. If you don't feel like subscribing now, that's fine. Just check in on this channel. My goal is to make this channel the best solar eclipse educational channel on the internet. Thanks again. I appreciate your time.